They don't really address their true, mistaken, distorted thinking, or they've gotten away with it. It really fuels that belief that they can continue doing it. It's difficult to prosecute because there's often delayed disclosures.
What is behind the criminal mind of a repeat offender? Well, when you look at cases like Tevin Favor, a former Scottsdale trainer, he was sentenced to 34 years in prison Friday for raping 4 women. While those 4 are the only convictions, Favor has a lengthy criminal history of sexual assault dating back to 2012, the latest assault happening in 2024. Also this week, Charles Shumway was arrested in Mesa and booked on child porn charges. Shumway was already on probation for trying to have sex with a minor twice, in 2019 and in 2021. Court paperwork says his probation officer found the videos and flagged it. He's being held on $200,000 bond. Very different crimes, but what they both have in common is history of the behavior over a long period of time.
A lot of times, what's behind rape are factors of power, control, attention, revenge. Sometimes, at the more extreme examples, people are aroused even to the suffering of someone else. So that's different than someone who is maybe has a sexual attraction to children. That offense might be more manipulative. It could still be motivated by attention, or it may make them feel powerful to look at the images.
Dr. Brecken Blades is a forensic psychologist who has no connection to those cases, but deals with criminals like these men every day. She says it's a lack of treatment and the difficulty of proving these cases in the courtroom leads to offenders committing the crimes time and time again.
Oftentimes, it's the victim's word against the perpetrators, and there's not enough evidence to move it forward until maybe there are multiple instances or we see a pattern of someone's behavior.
Reporting for Arizona's Family, I'm Stephanie Dupre.